everyone, it's Ellie Diecast, and today we've got a very exciting little show. These are cars that a lot of folks have not seen, and if you're a die-hard collector, you probably know what these are. These are the 2012 Road Car series, the series was very hard to find here in the U.S. I had heard that it was either discontinued or never came out in the U.S. I know it went to Canada and Brazil, the international markets. And the story on this series was that Hot Wheels basically gave this series to the international market as an exclusive. The series had been going on for a few years, and I don't know much about the previous years. But this was the last year, and it made this particular series pretty hard to find. So again, it's the 2012 series. And the cars themselves are really some of the best examples of what Hot Wheels can do with tampos and the real riders and the rims and the paint jobs that you're probably ever going to see. These don't belong to me. These belong to a friend of mine, Moods, who I buy for at shows, and he was willing to pay a pretty penny for these. But to tell you the truth, after buying them, I think the deal he got on these was probably by far the best deal I was ever going to see. I've seen these going for well over $100 on eBay, and we paid $60 for the set. I think it was $45 for the set brand new. So anyways, let's take a look at the cars. This is the Chaparral Camaro, and this is Jim Hall's Camaro. For the racing fans out there, you'll remember Jim Hall's name. It was built by Chaparral Cars. That's where the Chaparral name comes from. And there was only 3 of these built. This is a reproduction of the original car, at least one of the 3. And this was the Jim Hall version. And this particular version, the one with the 1 and the tampos that you see there, at least real close to it, is the only one known still to exist. So this particular car does exist. You can go see it at shows. I think I've got some pictures that may be on the screen by now. But this one won the 1970s Watkins Glen Trans Am race, and Jim Hall was the driver during that race. So the car, the more interesting story about this car was it disappeared after the race, as a lot of racing cars do. Again, the racing fans out there that really know their cars know that racing cars tend to disappear. The owners, once the car has technical issues or is destroyed in a race, a lot of times they don't repair the car and they sell the car off to parts or to collectors. And it's really hard to track a particular racing car, because a lot of times when the people that own these cars move the cars around, there isn't a lot of documentation that goes with it. So a lot of these cars just disappear, literally. They change into other cars. And this one, after 1972, it turned back up. So it disappeared for a while, and it was pretty much in destroyed condition when it turned back up. And the only identifying item really left in the car was the dashboard, and it had a fiberglass dashboard that was really consistent with this particular car, and the person that found it knew that. Yeah, it's $100,000 by the time it was totally restored. So this particular car is one of those cars that the collectors out there really, really know about. Jim Hall's Chaparral Camaro had about 475 horsepower in its day. For this car that day, that was quite a bit. So next up is, and I'm going to be very careful with these as we move them around, this particular one. Let's get him in there. This let me see if I can brighten up that. There we go. Oops. Let's get this guy brightened up. If I can get it to get a little brighter. There we go. So this one, a Ford GT40. This particular car is, checking my notes, I think this one is a kind of a combination of many cars. Yeah, the particular tampos on this, at least as far as I know, are not a real car, although it looks very, very similar to the real car. This is an American-British car, the Ford GT40, so a real car, obviously. It won Le Mans 4 consecutive times. And again, racing people out there know Le Mans is kind of the big challenge race for the manufacturers. Big bragging rights go with Le Mans. And it was originally produced basically to win against Ferrari, which had won the 6 previous Le Mans. So and I should say this particular car with these tampos on it it's a combination of, I think, the 3 cars that went 1, 2, and 3 at Le Mans in, I want to say, 1964, I think. I don't remember the date. But because one of them had a number 1 on it, one of them had a number 2 on it, one of them was black, one of them was white, and it's hard to see. I'll see if I can tell you, but it's got a gold stripe on it, and coincidentally, the other car's color was gold. So I think what they did was they took the 3 cars that went 1, 2, and 3 in Le Mans that year, and they jammed them together to make this particular Hot Wheels version, probably just because of getting rights and so forth to show the car. But behind the scenes, a little bit more interesting on the real car. In 1963, Ford was trying to buy Ferrari, and they spent millions on an audit to buy Ferrari, which I guess is common with large companies. Well, Ferrari cut off the talks, so the millions of dollars that Ford had spent were wasted. Of course, this is probably Ford's version. I'm sure some of you know Ferrari's version in all this. But Ford wasn't happy. So Ford, maybe that's what they could have called him, as Ford if they had merged. Ford set out to show up Ferrari in the Le Mans race, and Ferrari had just owned that race for most of the 1960s decade. Ford teamed up with Lola, the same Lola that makes the IndyCar engines that we see quite a bit of today, to partner to make this particular car. And so they set out to make something that would beat Ferrari in Le Mans. The resulting car was really pretty good on the racetrack, but it had a lot of performance issues, again, as prototypes tend to do. And in 1964, the program was handed over to Carroll Shelby, who you all know from the Shelby Cobra Mustang series of cars. And I know some of you are rolling your eyes because, of course, you would know Carroll Shelby, but I get a lot of people that don't know too much about cars, like me. So the Shelby American car, or the Shelby American GT40, won its next race, which was the Daytona 2000, and in 1965, it set up a duel with Ferrari at Le Mans. Not only did this particular GT40 win, but it went 1, 2, and 3 in the race. And I know there was some controversy in the race. If you want to read about it, there's some links there in the screen, I think by now. You can also go to Wikipedia. It's a well-documented car. And like I said, I think this one is a combination of many of the famous paint schemes of this car. I don't think there was ever a 12 black car with gold striping on it. Yeah, it's, like I mentioned, there's no number 12 I could find, but the winning car at Le Mans that year was number 2 car. I think second place was number 1, and third place was, I don't remember. But I think we're just combining them all. So, yeah, combination of all of them. So, another very cool car in that series. And again, slow transition because I'm being very careful with these. So next is James Garner's COPO Corvette. Get that one right in there. Let's get the lighting good for this guy, for you guys. There we go. Let's get the... Whoops, we had it. I've got a light meter here that I'm dealing with, trying to get the lighting better for you. There we go. So let's get a better angle of this one. This one, yes, it is the James Garner that we all would recognize that name. But the car itself is a little bit more interesting. It's got an L88 engine, and this particular car was sold or made for the Air racing team, which was James Garner's racing team, and Air stood for American International Racing. I don't know if he was the owner or a part owner or what, but L88 engine was built for that team in 1967. The COPO part of the name stands for Central Office Production Orders, which means that this particular car was individually ordered. And you could do that with Corvettes, although it's extremely expensive. Once they got these 3 Corvettes, these COPO L88 engine-based Corvettes, they customized them some more, sent them out, and did some more testing on them. And they got it ready for its race. And I think this one was in Le Mans too. No, this one was not in Le Mans. It was Daytona. And but in the race it had issues. The interesting thing was this particular race, when it showed up, its preliminary runs were some of the fastest that they had ever seen. And that's where this car really kind of set the stage for being well known. The other three, the 3 COPOs didn't really run in another race competitively. It was known for the performance marks that it set before the Daytona race. So, since then, the 44 car, which is owned by a different owner completely now, has won a ton of trophies. And probably, if you might think that you have seen this car, I'm going to see if I can lighten this up a little bit here. I can't get it to be lighter. All I can do is get it to be darker. There we go. This particular car was sold at auction for $744,000 in 2008. So, it's a pretty famous car. And that one is a reproduction of that famous car. Next up, we've got this BMW. This is the 92 BMW M3. And I know a lot of you really like the BMWs. I don't know much about BMWs, to tell you the truth. I'm more of a American muscle car fanatic. And so this one I know the least about. And it probably was the trickiest one to research. I think this is a make-believe paint scheme. I don't think this is a real car. And I don't know the story of why this particular one made it into the series, other than they were probably trying to appeal to a different base than the the American cars. So I'm not really sure if it's a real car or not, but it's a BMW 1992 M3. And since I don't have much to talk about, we'll take a look at it. This one really shows off, though, what they were able to do with this series. You can see the rims. They use some of the best rims that they've got with those gold rims on it. Obviously rubber tires, all metal. Great tampo work. There's some tiny tampos on these. We haven't really looked at the card art. The card art's the same for all of them. So, and I guess we should look at the back really quickly since we have some time. There's the cars that were in the series. And down below you get, well, you can't even see it. Here we go. Down below you get all the branding. And like I said, this was the 2012 series. If you're looking to pick these up, I've seen the prices anywhere from $60, which is what I paid for these, all the way up into the hundreds for this. So that is a nice one. Wish I knew more about this particular car. So post if you know more about it. All right. Oh, I knocked down my stand. And next, now we're getting into the two that probably got the most attention in this series. This one, let's get that in focus so you can see it. This is, it won't show up real well here in the video, but this one is a silverish color. It's not white, it's kind of a silver, like a chrome. And this one is the 935 78 Porsche. It's 78, obviously. It's also known as Moby Dick, and that's for this big weird tail that's on it. And we'll kind of talk about that. So a lot of times you'll see this called as the Porsche Moby Dick, the 935 Moby Dick. The car was, it was a redesign of a 911 Turbo, and it was built to compete in the Class 5 racing series at the time. Although Porsche really was doing pretty well in the series from what I understand, I think this was kind of their last attempt to make a production car that could, trying to get a little brighter here for you, that could really compete in the tour racing series. And yeah, Porsche was dominating the series at the time. However, Porsche had its eyes set on winning Le Mans. And we get back to Le Mans again. That seems to be the centerpiece of this series. It was named the Moby Dick for its big white whale tail, which we showed you. The car had a lot of issues, but in 1978 the car went to Le Mans, and it had issues in the race. This one, I think it had suspension issues was the issues with it. The car officially finished 8th. By the end of 78, Porsche had announced it would withdraw from racing altogether. And I don't think the issues with Porsche withdrawing from racing at this time had so much to do with them, with their performance in the races. It was that they were racing against their own customers. Porsche was making a lot of engines and car parts for the other teams and for other production models, and so Le Mans was Porsche was having a hard time kind of justifying why they would just go out and beat their competition or beat their own customers. So the 935/78 remains one of the most extreme production racing cars ever made. So, and again, you're not going to find anything this good looking in the main lines. It's really hard to get a decent shot of this one because it's so shiny. Let me see if I can get the lighting better here, because once we send these off, we're never going to see them again. There you go. So yeah, the 78 Porsche 933/78. So very, very nicely done. Last one, 6 cars in the series. And this one is probably the one, at least that I recognized, and at least when I see them going in singles, this one goes for the most money. And again, feel free to post if you know something about these cars. If you've been watching the videos, you know that I love figuring out the history of the toy part of the cars. I'm not much of a car guy. Greenwood Corvette. It's also called the Spirit of 76 Sebring Corvette. It was designed around the popular Stingray model. It looks very Stingray-ish, but much bigger. And the Sebring Greenwood car, it was asked to race at Le Mans in 1976, which kind of has an interesting story. This particular car was asked to race due to a lot of the cars at Le Mans weren't racing in the early 70s due to the gas shortage. And so the folks at Le Mans thought that they needed kind of a crowd favorite. So they offered John Greenwood, who owned this car at the time, $55,000 to come and race it at Le Mans. So he did. I don't know that it was necessarily made to race at Le Mans, but that's how it ended up there. And like I mentioned, it's a crowd favorite. Greenwood is the well-known maker. In fact, in the last main line, I believe this year and last year, there was a Greenwood Corvette that was one of the more popular models. But this particular one, this 76 Greenwood Corvette, or the Spirit of 76 Sebring, was one of the best known Corvettes in the world. And the car, I think, is currently up for bid, unless it's sold recently at the Monterey auction. And I know it was in 2013. It was up for bid, and I don't know if it was sold. I don't know what it was sold for. Also, there is a copy of this, and so the images I'm showing you, I tried to find out if those were really this particular car that this casting is built off of. I know there's one copy that looks very similar, and I don't know how to tell the difference. So if I have the copy in the pictures, just post below and let me know. But yeah, this was probably the most popular one in the series, And it really is detailed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick up all this detail, but there is a lot of detail on this. This particular car had 2 or 3 different paint schemes, all of which were similar to this. This is not the Le Mans paint scheme. I'm assuming this is the paint scheme that is on it maybe now. The Le Mans paint scheme was white with 76 on it, but slightly different decals. So that's going to wrap it up for this collection, and I'm very excited to have this. I'm going to take a couple pictures, post them on the Facebook page. These are going to be packed very carefully and sent off to my friend Moods, but I do appreciate him getting the series so that I could share it with you. And you know, that's the good thing about buying cars for other people, especially other people in other countries, is a lot of the stuff you see here in the videos is actually stuff that gets boxed back up and shipped back out. So it's not always mine to keep, otherwise I'd be knee deep in cars around here. So thanks again for watching. Remember the Facebook page. If you want to continue the conversation, you can always head over there. Also, I've noted before, our 800 subscriber contest is coming. I'm waiting for a few things to show up in the mail first before we offer the contest, but keep an eye out for that. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.